Episode 2, Rooms That Remember. Part 1, The Kitchen She Lived In. Morning crept into the house slowly, like it wasn't sure it belonged there without his mother. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of the kitchen, casting long, pale stripes across the floor. Dust floated quietly in the air, the kind you only notice when a room has been still for too long. Daniel stood in the doorway, arms folded, just looking. The kitchen had always been his mother's world. Small, cramped, always a little cluttered, yet somehow holding more warmth than anywhere else in the house. Old magnets still clung to the refrigerator door. A faded maple leaf souvenir, a grocery list that hadn't been updated in years, a crooked photo of him at age 10 holding a misshapen science project. He stepped inside and pulled open the junk drawer. Receipts, rubber bands, dried out pens, a tiny flashlight that still worked when he tapped it. He sighed. This room needed to be cleaned. He needed to clean it. He doubled up a trash bag and started clearing the counter. Plastic containers his mother reused for years, expired spices, newspaper clippings, coffee mugs stained with memory. Every object felt like a piece of her. Every piece made his chest tighten, and then, while wiping down the stove, he caught himself remembering things he hadn't thought about in decades. His mother, coming home at midnight from her second job, still smelling faintly of disinfectant from cleaning offices downtown. His mother, leaving at dawn for her third job on weekends. Her lunchbox always packed with the cheapest groceries because everything better went to him. His mother, sitting in this very kitchen with her aching feet in a bucket of warm water, whispering, "Just one more year. Then maybe it'll get easier." He had been too young then to understand how hard she worked, too self-involved as a teenager to appreciate it, too angry as an adult to respect it. Now he stood in the echo of that old effort and felt ashamed. He wiped a hand across his forehead, smearing dust along his skin. "So much for being a good son," he muttered. He found one of her old work uniforms draped over a chair, worn, faded, still carrying the faint scent of laundry detergent she bought on sale. He pressed the fabric to his face and inhaled. The memories were overwhelming. Not dramatic or loud, just painfully ordinary. The kind of memories that cut deepest because they were built on sacrifice, not speeches. He tossed the uniform gently into the laundry basket, treating it with the kind of care he wished he'd given her in life. As he wiped the last crumbs from the counter, his eyes drifted toward the tiny table in the corner, 2 chairs, one cushion thinning, one leg uneven. He remembered sitting there as a boy, swinging his feet, waiting for pancakes she'd rushed to make before running to her job. He remembered sitting there as a teenager, refusing to look at her after another fight. And he remembered sitting there as an adult alone after he'd moved out, visiting less and less each year, convincing himself that she understood. The truth was clearer now than ever. She didn't want him to be grateful. She just didn't want to be forgotten. Daniel leaned on the counter, looking around the kitchen one more time. This room wasn't just where she cooked. It was where she lived, where she held their little family together by sheer will. And now, cleaning it felt like unpacking years of her sacrifice he had tried too long to ignore. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I see it now. I really do." The refrigerator hummed softly behind him, the house as quiet as it had been the day she left it. Daniel tightened the trash bag, took one deep breath, and kept going. There was more to clean, more to face, more to remember. Part 2, her old cooking notebook. Daniel moved from the counters to the lower cabinets, wiping them down slowly, methodically, the way people do when they're trying not to think too hard. But the kitchen had a way of making him remember. Every cupboard he opened held pieces of her life, carefully stacked bowls, old jars reused too many times, a few chipped plates she refused to throw away. She used to say they still had good years left in them, the same way she joked about herself whenever he told her to rest more. He opened the drawer beside the stove, expecting the usual clutter. Instead, he froze. There it was. A small, faded cooking notebook lying neatly on top of a bundle of folded dish towels. It was exactly as he remembered. Red cover, soft and worn at the edges, a corner peeling away from years of being opened and closed. A thin elastic band wrapped around it stretched, almost brittle. He reached for it slowly, almost afraid it might crumble in his hands. This notebook had followed his mother everywhere in the house. She scribbled in it while stirring a pot, while watching TV, even while talking on the phone. She called it her brain because everything she needed to remember lived inside it. Daniel sat down at the kitchen table and pulled the elastic band loose. The notebook opened easily, as though it had been waiting for him. Inside were pages filled with her handwriting. Soft loops, small letters, a few smudges from flour, oil, and time. Recipes he had grown up with, chicken soup she made when he was sick, cornbread she baked on Sundays, the cheap spaghetti sauce she perfected when money was tight. He flipped through slowly, recognizing each scribble. Then, he reached a page near the back that made him stop. A loose sheet of paper was tucked between the pages. White once, now slightly yellowed, folded neatly in half. His heartbeat slowed in his chest. He opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, but larger, intentionally careful, like she wrote it on a day she felt something important needed to be said. The note read, "Danny, if you ever find this, remember you were never a burden. You were the reason I kept going. Be kind to yourself. You deserve that much. Mom." Daniel swallowed hard. The message wasn't long. It wasn't poetic or dramatic or anything she'd ever say out loud. But it was meant for him. Clearly, deliberately. He sat back, the paper trembling slightly between his fingers. His mother had never been good with spoken emotions. She didn't say, "I love you" often. She showed it through extra portions on his plate, through long shifts at work, through staying up until he got home, even after they'd argued. But this was the first time he saw the emotion written plainly, without hesitation. He pressed the note flat on the table and stared at it as if it might disappear. Why had she hidden it? Why tuck it away instead of giving it to him? Maybe she was waiting for the right moment. Maybe she didn't know how to hand it to him. Maybe she never expected he'd find it so soon, or because of something so final. The kitchen felt heavier now, quiet in a different way, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath with him. Daniel smoothed the paper carefully and slid it back into the notebook, exactly where it had been. He closed the cover with both hands, holding it for a long moment. It wasn't just a recipe notebook. It was her voice, her thoughts, her heart pressed between pages. And for the first time since the funeral, he felt her presence in a way that didn't break him, just softened him. He placed the notebook gently at the center of the table, like a small altar. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Thanks, Mom." The refrigerator hummed. A breeze nudged the curtains, and the house felt a little less empty. Part 3, the night the porch light flickered. The house was quiet in that particular way old houses get quiet, as if they are listening. Daniel sat on the edge of his mother's bed, the notebook still in his hand. That last line, "Come home while I'm still here, Dan," kept burning in his chest like a fresh wound. He closed the notebook gently, almost reverently, and set it on the nightstand. He needed air. He needed something solid, something that didn't smell like endings. The wooden floor creaked under his weight as he walked back toward the hallway. Each sound felt louder in the silence, like the house was aware he was leaving the room where the message had been waiting for him for years. When he reached the living room, he paused. The porch light, the old, yellow, stubborn porch light, was glowing through the window, the same way it had since he'd first left home at 18. Only now, something was different. It flickered, just once, a soft, tremulous blink, but enough for Daniel to notice. He stepped closer to the window. The bulb glowed steady, then dipped again. Daniel whispered, "Come on, not tonight." He opened the front door. Cold autumn air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet leaves and distant chimneys. The porch boards groaned as he stepped outside. The light flickered again, this time longer, like a breath being held. Daniel reached up and tapped the metal casing gently with his knuckle. "Don't do this," he said under his breath, unsure whether he was talking to the bulb or to the memory of his mother leaving that light on for him every night he stayed away. Another flicker. He felt something tighten in his throat. "Look, Mom, I'm here, okay? I came home." The wind picked up, cold and restless. The maple tree branches swayed above him, and somewhere in the darkness, a loose shutter slapped against the siding. For a moment, he wondered if he had imagined the flicker, if grief was playing tricks on him. But then, faint but clear, the bulb steadied on its own. A warm glow, strong again, unwavering. Daniel let out a trembling breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Yeah," he whispered. "That's better." He rested his hand on the railing, looking out over the yard that hadn't changed, the gravel path, the old bird bath, the lonely mailbox leaning slightly to one side. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Behind him, the house hummed faintly, as if relieved. Daniel turned back toward the doorway, glancing once more at the porch light. For the first time since he arrived, it didn't just look like a light. It looked like a message. A gentle reminder, this house waited for you. It's still waiting. He stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. Tomorrow he would start sorting through the rest of the house. Tomorrow he would face more memories tucked away in closets, drawers, and boxes. But tonight he let the porch light do what it had always done, guide him home. Part 4. The sound of her voice in the hallway. The hallway felt colder the next morning. Daniel woke early, before the sun fully climbed over the hills of Maple Hollow. The quiet of the house pressed against him again, patient, familiar, and heavy, with the kind of silence that used to frighten him as a child. He stood at the end of the hallway, staring down its length. Every door was open except one, his mother's sewing room, a door she hadn't closed in years. She loved sunlight. She hated shutting things away. But now it was closed, tight, as if the house itself had sealed it out of habit in her absence. Daniel rubbed a hand over his face. "All right, let's get this over with." He stepped forward, each footfall sinking into memories. His mother calling down the hallway for dinner, her light footsteps moving from room to room, her humming always that soft, wandering tune she hummed when she was lost in thought. By the time he reached the closed door, his breath had shortened. He rested his hand on the knob. Cold, he turned it slowly. The hinges gave a soft, drawn-out groan as the door opened. A rush of cool, dusty air escaped, as though the room had been holding its breath. Inside was exactly as he remembered it, and nothing like he remembered at all. Stacks of folded fabric, her old Singer sewing machine, the shelves lined with jars of mismatched buttons, a half-finished quilt still pinned to the board, frozen mid-pattern, waiting for hands that would never finish it. Daniel stepped inside, and the floor whispered beneath him. Then, something else. A sound so faint, he questioned whether it was real. A voice, soft, drifting through the hallway behind him. "Dan?" He froze. His heart slammed once, hard. He turned his head, staring at the doorway. Nothing. Just the hallway. Still, empty. But he knew that voice. He had heard it all his life. Warm, gentle, calling him home after playing outside until dusk. "Mom," he whispered. No answer. Only the house settling, the subtle tick of the thermostat, the flutter of a curtain. Daniel swallowed hard and forced himself to breathe. Grief plays tricks on people, he told himself. Old houses do too. Together, they're a dangerous combination. Still, it felt too real to dismiss. He took another step into the room. A spool of thread rolled slightly on the table, just an inch, maybe less. He stared at it. No breeze, no open windows. He exhaled shakily. Okay, that's enough for now. He backed out of the sewing room, pulling the door closed not all the way, but enough to feel like he had shut something behind him. As he walked back down the hallway, he could swear he heard it again. A faint hum. Her hum? The same tune she used whenever she was trying to hold herself together, and the same tune she used to comfort him when he was falling apart. It followed him, gentle and fragile, like an echo from another lifetime. Daniel stopped at the living room doorway. He let the silence settle again. He didn't believe in ghosts. He never had. But standing there in the dim hallway, feeling the house breathe around him, he wasn't sure what he believed anymore. Part 5. The text that broke the quiet. Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, the one that had seen decades of meals, arguments, apologies, and late-night conversations with his mother. The steam from his reheated soup curled upward, disappearing into the stillness. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't anything, really. Just present, surviving the moment. He took a slow sip, forcing himself to eat something, anything, because grief had a way of hollowing out a man from the inside. His phone buzzed, a small vibration against the wooden table. He blinked. Nobody really contacted him these days. He reached for the phone, expecting maybe a work email or a notification from the bank. Instead, it was a message from Alec. Just one line. Don't contact me for a while. Short, clean, surgical. The kind of message that left no room for reply, no space for misunderstanding, no crack for hope to slip through. Daniel stared at the screen until the words blurred. His hand trembled. He set the phone down gently, as though placing it too hard might shatter something already fragile inside him. He whispered into the empty kitchen, "I'm sorry, son." The house swallowed the apology whole. No answer. No footsteps. No voice from down the hallway telling him to breathe. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the quiet ache of a man realizing how deeply he had failed the one person he could not bear to lose. The soup turned cold, but Daniel didn't move. The house held its breath with him. Part 6. The light he didn't know he needed. The sun dipped below the trees, dragging the last streaks of daylight across Maple Hollow. Shadows stretched across the yard, long and thin, like memories trying to reach him from the past. Daniel stepped outside with a heaviness that clung to him like a second skin. The porch light stood waiting, old, dim, stubbornly warm. The same one his mother kept lit every night, even when he stopped coming home for holidays, for birthdays, for years at a time. He ran his fingers along the metal frame. Cold, but the glass was warm. She had replaced the bulb every time it flickered. Every time it dimmed, every time she thought he might come back. Daniel swallowed the knot in his throat. He flipped the switch. The light glowed a soft yellow breath into the darkness. Not bright, not powerful, but steady. A quiet reminder. Someone once waited for you. Someone believed you'd find your way back. He sat down on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring out at the empty street. A dog barked in the distance. Leaves rustled. A car passed somewhere far away. But here, in this small corner of the world, everything was still. He let the stillness settle around him, a blanket he didn't quite deserve. His phone was still in his pocket. Alex's message felt like a bruise pressed against his ribs. But, for the first time since he returned, Daniel felt the smallest shift inside him. A quiet intention. A spark. Maybe this place wasn't just where his mother had lived. Maybe it was where he was meant to finally understand something. Something about love, about loss, about coming back before it's too late. He looked at the porch light again, steady, warm, waiting. He whispered into the night, "I don't know the way home yet, but I'm trying." And the light, old and imperfect, stayed lit, as if answering him in the only language it knew. Episode 3. The Things She Saved. Part 1. The bedroom she kept warm. Morning sunlight slipped through the thin white curtains, scattering soft gold across the hallway. Daniel stood in front of his mother's bedroom door, feeling a familiar heaviness settle in his chest. He hadn't stepped into this room since he arrived. Not once. He kept walking past it, pretending he didn't see it, pretending he wasn't avoiding the hardest part of the house. But today, there was nowhere else left to clean, no more excuses to hide behind. He placed his hand on the doorknob. It was warm, almost unnervingly warm. He pushed the door open. The scent hit him first. Lavender lotion, warm cotton sheets, the faint sweetness of her perfume, a smell that shouldn't still linger, yet somehow stubbornly remained, like she had been here only hours ago. The room was small, with soft colors she always loved, faded blues, pale greens, quiet fabrics. The quilt she made last winter lay folded at the foot of the bed. Her slippers sat neatly beside the nightstand. The window was slightly cracked, letting in a whisper of wind that rustled the curtains. Daniel stepped inside. Everything looked untouched. His mother had always kept this room gentle, warm, lived in. Not fancy, not modern, just comforting in a way only mothers seem to understand. He picked up a hairbrush from the dresser. A few strands of her gray hair were still tangled in the bristles. He closed his eyes. Just holding it made his throat tighten. He set it down carefully, as if placing a fragile artifact in a museum. Onto the closet next. He opened it slowly. Inside, her clothes hung neatly arranged by season, color, and memory. She had always organized things this way. Daniel ran his hand across the sleeves. Soft sweaters, old flannel shirts, simple dresses she wore to church. He pressed his forehead against the doorframe. "This is harder than I thought," he whispered. The grief came in waves, sudden, sharp, unpredictable. Yesterday morning it had been the fridge magnet. Last night, the porch light. And now, this closet, it wasn't just her things. It was the echo of everything she'd ever touched. Daniel reached into the bottom shelf and pulled out a wicker basket filled with folded linens. As he lifted them, something small slid out and landed on the floor with a soft thud. A wooden box, old, worn, hand-carved. He stared at it for a long moment before bending down to pick it up. This wasn't something she bought at a store. This was something she kept, something she protected. He brushed the dust from the top, tracing the faint carvings with his thumb. He didn't open it, not yet. Instead, he sat down on the edge of the bed, her bed, holding the box in both hands, feeling the weight of it, feeling the weight of her. For the first time since the funeral, Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not pain, not sorrow, something gentler, a softness he didn't quite trust yet. He looked around the room, the quiet colors, the half-open curtains, the lingering scent, the warmth that still clung to everything she owned, and he finally understood. This wasn't just a room. This was a life she had carefully tended. And now, it was waiting for him to be brave enough to step into it. He took a steady breath. "And I'm here," he whispered. "I'm trying, Mom." He placed the wooden box on the bed beside him. He didn't know what was inside. He only knew one thing. Whatever it was, she had saved it for a reason. Part 2. The Box of Small Things. Daniel sat on the edge of his mother's bed for a long moment, the wooden box resting quietly in his hands. It was surprisingly light. The hinges were old, a little rusted, but still intact. He rubbed a thumb along the lid, feeling the uneven texture of hand-carved lines. His mother never had the money for expensive things, but she always kept what mattered. He inhaled slowly, bracing himself. Then he opened it. Inside, he found childhood, not in a poetic sense, literally. Right there, lying gently against a piece of cotton cloth, were the tiny crafts he made when he was a boy. The lopsided clay turtle from second grade, the popsicle stick picture frame he glued crooked, the beaded bracelet string he never finished, the cardboard sun he painted with cheap school watercolors. Small things, fragile things, things he forgot about decades ago. But she hadn't. Daniel swallowed hard. He picked up the clay turtle first. One of the legs had broken off long ago. He could almost hear his mother's voice from the memory. "It's perfect, Danny. Imperfect things are always the most precious." He had rolled his eyes at her back then. Now, that memory felt like a soft hand on his shoulder. He set the turtle down and lifted the popsicle stick frame. Inside, it was a faded picture of him missing his 2 front teeth, smiling like the world was simple, safe, and easy. He couldn't stop the small laugh that escaped him. "When did I stop being that kid?" he whispered. He reached deeper into the box and found a baseball card creased, bent, edges frayed. On the back was his mother's handwriting. "For my little champ, don't forget you can do hard things." He closed his eyes. He didn't remember her writing that. He didn't remember her keeping any of this. What else had she quietly protected when he wasn't looking? He found a plastic dinosaur missing an arm, a paper airplane they decorated together, and a small keychain with his name engraved in cheap aluminum letters. And at the very bottom, tucked neatly under everything else, was a folded slip of paper. He opened it carefully. A drawing. His drawing, a family portrait he made when he was about 7. A stick figure version of him, smiling with crooked lines. A stick figure version of his mom holding his hand. A sun with a face in the corner. 2 small hearts in the sky. On the back she had written, "You're my whole world, Danny." Daniel pressed the paper to his chest. He didn't cry. Not fully, but his breathing trembled, and something in him cracked open just enough for light to slip through. He looked around her bedroom, the soft colors, the carefully folded quilt, the slippers she aligned each night before bed, the small lamp she always turned on during storms. His mother had lived a quiet, unglamorous, imperfect life. But she loved fiercely. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, persistently, fiercely. He placed all the items back inside the wooden box, arranging them gently as though each one were priceless. And maybe they were, because they weren't just objects. They were reminders of a boy she believed in, a boy she protected, a boy she never gave up on even when he grew into a man who pulled away, argued, shut down, and left her waiting. He closed the box and sat in the silence for a moment longer. "I didn't know you saved all this," he whispered into the empty room. "I didn't know you saved me." The quiet did not answer. It didn't have to. He could feel her love gathered in every corner of this room. Still here. Still warm. Still holding on to him the same way she held onto these small, forgotten things. And for the first time since he came back to Maple Hollow, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt loved. Not deservedly, not perfectly, but softly, gently, unconditionally, the way only a mother can love. Part 3. The letter she never sent. The wooden box sat beside Daniel on the bed, closed now, but heavier with meaning than when he first opened it. He wiped his palms against his jeans, steadying himself, and looked around the bedroom again. Something inside him urged him to keep going, to search, to uncover, to face whatever else his mother had left behind. He stood and moved toward the nightstand. The lamp, wrapped in soft yellow light, looked like it had been switched off only yesterday. Beside it sat a small ceramic dish holding her rosary, a pair of reading glasses, and a single bobby pin. Ordinary things, but arranged with the quiet care she always lived by. He opened the nightstand drawer. Inside were stacks of folded tissues, a half-used notebook of crossword puzzles, a pen with the ink nearly gone, and a small stack of envelopes tied together with thin twine. His fingers froze. These weren't bills. They weren't receipts or coupons or grocery lists. They were letters, all handwritten, all addressed to Danny. He sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, afraid the moment would collapse under the weight of emotion. He untied the twine carefully, like unwrapping something sacred. Most envelopes were sealed. He chose one that was already open. The paper was soft, slightly yellowed with age. Her handwriting small, rounded, a little shaky filled the page. He read, asterisk, asterisk, Danny, I know you think you have to be strong all the time. I know you think you have to fix everything on your own, but you don't. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. Not by me. Not by anyone. Love isn't something you earn by being flawless. It's something you carry with you, even when you don't feel like you deserve it. I hope one day you let yourself rest. I hope one day you let yourself be loved without fighting it. Mom, asterisk, asterisk. Daniel blinked hard. The words blurred. He let the letter rest in his lap, staring at the handwriting as his throat tightened. He had spent years chasing perfection in his work, in how he raised Alex, in the impossible standards he set for himself after destroying too many relationships. And all this time, his mother had known. She had seen the weight he carried, seen the walls he built, seen the fear that lived behind his anger. She just never pushed, never lectured, never demanded. She wrote letters instead, quiet, gentle, patient letters. Letters he was only reading now. Daniel picked up another envelope, this one sealed, and held it to his forehead. "Why didn't you give these to me?" he asked the empty room. But he knew why. He had kept his distance, pulled away, called less, visited less, argued more. Maybe she wanted to wait for the right moment. Maybe she never found it. Maybe she thought she had more time. He unfolded the next letter and read only a line before stopping. "I miss you every day, even when you're only a phone call away." He swallowed painfully and set it aside. He couldn't read more. Not yet. The air felt too thick, the silence too sharp, the truth too heavy. He placed the letters back into the drawer, but he held onto the first one, the message about not needing to be perfect. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet, right behind his driver's license, right where he kept the things he needed daily, things he couldn't lose. Because this letter, this too, was something he had needed for a long time. He stood there for a moment, hand resting on the drawer handle, eyes soft with a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Then he whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for trying to reach me, even when I didn't reach back." The room didn't answer, but it didn't feel silent anymore. Her voice lived in these letters, and in some quiet way, she was still talking to him, still guiding him, still loving him from the spaces she left behind. Part 4. The Man He Became. Daniel stood in the doorway of his mother's bedroom for a long time after placing the letters back into the drawer. His body felt heavy, like the past had wrapped itself around him and refused to let go. He stepped out into the hallway, turning off the light behind him, and the soft click of the switch echoed far louder than it should have. The house felt different now, not just old, not just quiet. It felt like a mirror reflecting every part of him he'd tried to forget. He walked into the living room and sat down on the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together. The photo album he'd found earlier rested on the coffee table, its old burgundy cover worn down from years of handling. But he didn't open it this time. His mind was already full, already drifting backward. Slowly, memories rose to the surface. Not childhood memories this time, but the years after he became a father. The difficult years. The years he rarely allowed himself to revisit. He leaned back, eyes unfocused, staring at nothing as the truth unfolded inside him. He remembered himself at 32. Overworked, angry, tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Trying to provide, trying to be strong, trying to be everything except honest. Alex had been 10. A sensitive kid. Quiet. Always watching, always listening. Daniel hadn't understood that back then. He'd taken Alex's quietness as weakness. Taken his questions as disrespect. Taken his fear as defiance. He winced at the memory. He could see himself standing in the kitchen, slamming a cabinet door harder than he meant to, snapping at Alex for something insignificant, spilled juice, unfinished homework, a forgotten baseball glove. He could see Alex shrink back, shoulders pulled up to his ears, eyes wide but silent. And Daniel? He always mistook silence for stubbornness. He rubbed his face with both hands. God, what was I thinking? He knew what he was thinking. He just didn't want to admit it. He had been terrified. Terrified of failing. Terrified of repeating the mistakes he believed his own father made. Terrified of being seen as weak. And so he became harsh, demanding, impatient. cold, the very things he hated. He remembered the nights he came home late, still wearing the day's stress like a heavy coat, barely looking at Alex before retreating to his room. He remembered the mornings when Alex tried to talk to him, tried to show him a drawing or a school project, only for him to say, "Not now, I'm busy." He remembered the phone calls he ignored, the school meetings he skipped, the times he said, "We'll do it later," but never followed through. A sharp pain pressed behind his ribs. He whispered into the empty room, "I should have been better. I should have tried harder." He deserved better. The silence didn't disagree. The hardest memories hit last. The shouting, the slammed doors. The moment Alex started raising his voice back, not out of rebellion but out of heartbreak. Daniel had told himself Alex was ungrateful, difficult, disrespectful. But now, sitting alone in this quiet house, he saw the truth. Alex was hurting, and he didn't know how to tell his father. Daniel exhaled shakily. He thought about his mother, about the letters she wrote, the little crafts she kept, the way she loved him gently even when he pushed her away. She had tried to break the cycle. She just didn't have enough time. Daniel felt his throat tighten again. "I became a man you wouldn't be proud of," he murmured. But then he glanced toward the hallway. The wooden box, the saved crafts, the letter that said, "You don't have to be perfect to be loved." Maybe she hadn't been disappointed. Maybe she had known he was trying the only way he knew how. And maybe, just maybe, there was still time for him to change. Still time for him to break the cycle himself. Still time for him to become someone Alex didn't have to fear, avoid, or resent. He sat up straighter. He wasn't that angry 32-year-old anymore. He wasn't trapped in those years. He wasn't doomed to stay the man he had been. He could choose differently. He could choose now. Daniel looked toward the porch light outside the window, a faint glow against the coming evening, and he felt something shift in his chest. A beginning. A small one. But a beginning. Part 5. The Weight of the Past. I didn't sleep much that night. Even though the motel room was quiet, my mind kept replaying old scenes I had spent years trying to bury: my father shouting, my mother crying behind a closed door, and me, a kid who never understood why love in our home always came wrapped in fear. When dawn finally slipped in through the dusty window, I felt heavier, not rested, like something inside me had been stirred awake. I closed my hands, took a slow breath, and said to myself, if I came all this way, I have to keep going. Outside, Maple Hollow was already alive. A slow, small-town kind of morning. People sweeping their porches. A dog barking behind a fence. The smell of fresh bread drifting from a bakery across the street. Nothing here had changed, but I had. Or at least I was trying to. I headed toward the one place I had been avoiding since the moment I arrived. My old high school. The building looked smaller than I remembered, like time had shrunk it. Or maybe I had inflated it in my mind all those years: the hallways, the lockers, the classrooms where I first learned how to disappear. As I walked past the chain-link fence, flashes of memory hit me all at once. The teacher who said I'd never amount to anything. The friend who turned his back the moment rumors spread about my father. The afternoon I packed my bag, walked out of class, and never returned. I felt the weight of those moments pressing on my chest, but I didn't turn away. Not this time. I sat on a bench under the big oak tree by the field, the same tree where I used to eat lunch alone, the same tree that had watched me grow up and fall apart. A thought came quietly, but firmly. Facing this isn't about them, it's about you. I let the silence settle, let the air wash over me. And then, something unexpected happened. A woman approached, mid-40s, kind eyes, the kind of calm presence that makes you feel safe before she even says a word. "Daniel Hayes?" she asked. My heart froze. No one in this town had spoken my name in more than 20 years. "Yes," I said cautiously. "Do I know you?" She smiled. "You might not remember me. I was Mrs. Carter back then. I worked in the counseling office." The memory struck. The counselor who once told me, "You're not broken, you're overwhelmed." The only adult who ever tried to reach me. "I do remember you," I said softly. She sat beside me with no hesitation. "I heard you were back in town. I'm glad you came." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure why her words hit so deeply. "People think leaving solves everything," she continued. "But coming back, that takes courage." I let out a shaky breath. "Some days I'm not sure this was a good idea." "It was," she said gently. "Pain grows in the dark. Healing needs light." Those words settled into me like seeds. We talked for a while about life, about choices, about the versions of ourselves we run from. And before she left, she placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your past isn't your enemy, Daniel. It's just a story you haven't finished reading." When she walked away, I sat there for a long time, letting her words echo. Maybe I wasn't here to rewrite my past. Maybe I was here to finally understand it. And for the first time since arriving in Maple Hollow, I felt something shift and opening. A crack in the wall I'd built around myself. A small, steady light. A light that reminded me of home. The porch light that had never gone out. Part 6. The door I never thought I'd open. I spent the rest of the afternoon walking through Maple Hollow as if I were seeing it for the first time, even though every street, every mailbox, every crack in the sidewalk had once been familiar enough to navigate with my eyes closed. Maybe things look different when you're not running anymore. By the time the sun dipped low, painting the town in amber and soft orange, I found myself standing exactly where I knew I would end up, even if I had told myself I wasn't ready. In front of my childhood home. The house looked older, tired, like it had been holding its breath for decades. The paint was peeling. The porch rail leaned slightly to one side, but the shape of it, the bones of it, was unmistakably the same. And there it was. The porch light. Still glowing. Still burning. Still waiting. My throat tightened. I had to close my eyes for a moment just to hold myself together. Who kept it on? Why? For what? As I stepped toward the gate, every memory I tried to bury rose like ghosts from the ground. The night I ran away, the fights, the silence, the moments when love felt like a luxury we couldn't afford. My hand shook when I pushed the gate open. The rusty hinge squealed, a sound so familiar it almost hurt. I made it halfway up the walkway before I froze. The front door opened. A woman stepped out mid-70s, short gray hair, a sweater wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes widened the way someone's do when they see a miracle they stop believing in. "Daniel," she whispered. I hadn't heard my mother say my name in 22 years, but the sound of it broke something open inside me. "Hi, Mom," I managed to say. She cupped a hand over her mouth, stunned. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stepped forward, slowly, carefully, as if afraid I might disappear again. When she reached me, she didn't hug me, not yet. She just looked at me, studying my face the way you look at a photograph you thought you'd lost forever. "You came back," she said softly. I did. Her eyes filled with a mix of relief, guilt, fear, and something deeper, hope. The kind of hope that has survived too many winters. "Come inside," she said. Her voice trembled. It's cold out here." I followed her into the house. The air smelled exactly the same old books, cedar wood, a hint of vanilla from the candles she used to light during storm season. The living room hadn't changed much, but it felt smaller, like time had been slowly closing its grip on it. She motioned for me to sit, but I stayed standing, unsure, uncomfortable, overwhelmed. Her hands fidgeted. Her eyes kept returning to me, as if checking that I was real. "I didn't know if I'd ever see you again," she said. "I didn't know if I'd ever come back," I admitted. Silence stretched between us, not empty silence, but heavy silence. The kind filled with everything we had never said. She finally broke it. "I kept the porch light on," she whispered. "Every night. Your father, he thought it was foolish, but I told him that if you ever needed a sign, something to guide you home, that would be it." Hearing that felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. "Why?" I asked, barely above a breath, because no matter what happened, no matter how far you ran, you were still my son. Her voice cracked. Mine nearly did too. We both had questions, hundreds of them. We both had wounds, deep ones. But in that moment, we weren't solving anything. We were simply standing in the same room after a lifetime apart. And maybe that was enough for the night. She finally stepped closer and touched my arm, hesitant at first. Then she wrapped her arms around me. I let myself lean into her, not as a man trying to carry his past, but as a son who had finally come home. When we pulled apart, she wiped her eyes and smiled softly. "You're tired," she said. "Rest. We can talk in the morning." I nodded. As she walked me to the old guest room, the room that once belonged to me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A beginning. Not a perfect one, but a real one. Before I closed the door, I glanced back toward the living room window. The porch light was still glowing, bright and steady. For the first time in 2 decades, I felt like it wasn't just waiting for me. It was welcoming me.